Hi, hi everybody. I'm Desmond. Uh, Good afternoon. Uh, Thank you to Charlie for inviting me to talk to you in the middle of a pandemic. Hopefully that's not a problem, and I hope that I can hold your attention for 20 minutes at least, and just basically explain to you my experience of academia and how I've managed to negotiate academia, so to speak, and most importantly, my passion for the subject of history. So, to begin, tell you a bit about myself. Uh, I'm Desmond. I am a doctoral candidate for a PhD in history at the University of London, Goldsmiths. And hopefully you can't tell, but you could probably tell, I am the grand old age of 40. So the reason I thought that I would mention that is because a lot of my talk is going to be about what you would call perhaps non-traditional ways of getting into academia. And I wanted to pose a question to you, because it's the question I've posed to myself at various periods over the last decade or so. And that was whether there was a linear path through academia. And what I mean by that is, when I started along the path I find myself now, it actually came from what you could call a disappointment. The traditional thing was, I finished my A-levels at 18. I applied to university. I got into university, and the plan was to go to a university, get a good degree, and get myself a good job. If I was lucky, I'd have been able to buy a house by 28. That was my original plan. To say that it hasn't turned out that way would be an understatement. It started off perfectly well. I went to secondary school in East London. I got the A-level results. I went to university, and I remember the feeling of achievement, the sense of achievement, that now, regardless of what my teachers had said up to that point, I was quite a clever person. So with I don't know if you could call it overconfident, I sort of felt that I had the whole world was ahead of me. I would graduate by 21, and then I would go on to basically unlimited wealth, and I'd be on the beach somewhere in the Caribbean by 25 with the house that I promised myself that I was going to buy. But that worked to a certain extent. But the mistake that I found that I made was, I assumed that life and the circumstances of life would not change. Now, I often say to myself, what would 40-year-old Desmond say to 20-year-old Desmond about academia, and life in general. And while I was thinking that, I found two quite interesting quotes. Now, one is by the boxer Muhammad Ali, which is, "A man that views the world at 50 in the same way that he did at 20 has wasted 30 years of his life." And I'm starting to really see the truth in that statement. It's quite profound. And the second was by E.M. Forster. And he said, "You must be willing to let go of the life you have planned so that you can have the life that's waiting for you." And so the traditional path, I'd say, to get into academia was to complete your A levels at about 17 and a half, start university at 21 and graduate at, start university at 18 and graduate at 21. I am lucky enough to have had a supportive family, which you will find is a bonus whenever you go into any period of study. Some of you will find that you're away from home. Even if you are at home, it's always good to have that support network, just in case things don't go quite according to plan. But then I find that I've gained 2 degrees in my early 30s, which wasn't essentially the way it was supposed to go. So why did it take so long, you could argue? Life got in the way, without that being a cliche. What I found is that when I actually went to university the first time, I don't think I was as prepared as I would have liked to have been. And I would like to say to you, really ask yourself, firstly, what is it that you want to do? You're going to have people around, your parents, your friends, your family, and they're going to say things to you like, if you do a certain degree, it will get you here. If you go to university, you'll be earning a certain amount of money by a certain age. And what I often find that young people can do is often they go to university to study to please other people, rather than actually thinking about their own personal development. Now, for me, I've worked in quite a few fields. I've been a youth worker, detached outreach worker, working with people with substance abuse issues. I've worked front of house in theatres and museums. I've also managed to set up a charity which specialised in workshops in training on anti-racism and discrimination. I'll speak a bit more about that later as regards to ethnicity and being an ethnic minority, if you wish, in history. And I've also been, in past incarnations, a musician and a rapper. Now, the reason I mention these different occupations is because all in their small ways, they've enabled me to partake on a career in history. How, you might ask? The fact that I'm sitting here talking to you means that the skills learned in those different places and have enabled me to have some proficiency at public speaking. obvious things such as writing reports, writing essays. So being able to collate and organize your ideas, which is important when we talk about history and historical evidence. Research. So I'm sure when I was invited to speak to you guys, when I was invited to inspire your future, I did my own research. What would people say? How would people present it? So I would be able to speak to you frankly and confidently. Time management is another one. The being on time and how you manage your time. It's a skill that will become more and more important to you as you go on through your career in academia. But there are also less obvious skills. For example, how do you manage disappointment? How will you cope if you didn't get the grade that you expected? If you didn't get on the course that you originally expected to go on, will that knock you completely, or will you pick yourself up and continue? I think it helps you to, and this is life experience, deal with people from all walks of life. If you come from a working class part of East London, as I do, so by going to university, I was able to share ideas and make friends with people that were from a different ethnic background, had a different cultural background to me, and you're just able to share ideas, and then it widens your scope, so you are able to better traverse the ups and downs of adult life. Being at work, you handle different situations. You may have to work with somebody that you don't like. You may have to work with people that you find unreliable, people that just don't agree with you. But at the same time, if you've got a task that you need to get done, it doesn't matter whether you do or you don't like somebody. You have to get the job done. So you have to be professional enough to work with that person. And also balancing your personal life with your academic life. I find that you've got to know how to have fun. You've got to know how to relax and step away from it on occasions. You'll find yourself, I find myself at times in the middle of an essay, and the words are just not coming. Your brilliant essay plan is not quite brilliant. At 2 o'clock in the morning, with a cup of cold coffee and constant packets of custard creams, it's just not working. So there's times you have to say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to go to bed, I'm going to let my mind clear, and I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to set time up in the term where I'm not going to do any work. I'm going to take that time to meet friends. I'm going to take that time to go on holiday. Look after yourself. Self-care. Look after your own well-being, because that's something that we often forget, especially in modern society where everything is 100 miles per hour. So I would probably suggest techniques to just slow down. I find that on my to-do list, limit it. Make sure that you achieve 2 or 3 things in a day, rather than having to go from 1 to 10. Allow some time for yourself. I'm actually finding, and I should probably suggest it now, meditation is really useful. It sounds very, very deep and intense. I did not go and meet a monk or anything like that. I just found an online 21-day meditation by Deepak Chopra. I take 20 minutes a day to just sit in silence and watch my breathing. And I felt that that's really helped me to ground myself, and it gives my mind time to clear. It gives me a time to organize my thoughts, and then when I return, I find that I'm a lot more productive when it comes to work. So why history? History, the image of history is actually quite interesting. You usually expect to see somebody like David Starkey on television talking to you about people or things that are long dead, and I assume that most of you guys are 18 plus. Henry VIII is not rock and roll enough for you. You're not necessarily interested in it, but you do it because history in England is usually taught as, and this is a massive assumption on my behalf, I say this only partly in jest, the Tudor period, the World Wars, a little bit about the Windrush, and then where we are now. We are just about to, or we're just about to leave the European Union. I'm sure they're going to add that bit in, and there's going to be a lot said about coronavirus. History is basically the study of the past, how you collate, organize, present, and interpret this information. It becomes academic history when you investigate patterns and you analyze these patterns. You then create a narrative which is put up there for other people to either agree with or disagree with. But it becomes part of public debate. I got into history because history basically was my favourite subject at school. If I had £1 for every time I heard somebody say, oh, I wish I did history, I would be a very wealthy man. Everybody seems to like history, but something about history seems to push people away. And I think that it may be because of the way the history is presented. So if I said to you, so maybe change the way that you looked at history. So for me, history is still important because I feel that every day, and this is not as grandiose as it sounds, every day we make history. If academic history is about the recording of events, in our day-to-day lives, we do this every day. Social media is basically recording events. So how you use your Instagram, for example, how the things that you record and you upload to YouTube, you're making history because this is a record of something that's happened. I find that when we're able to take our own histories and move those to the forefront, rather than histories that we are being fed, so to speak. I also have an inclination towards history, as coming from a Caribbean family, for example. A lot of the stories that you find out about your family is delivered in an oral method. Somebody sits there and they say to you, you remind me of your grandparents, of a certain relative. Tell me about my grandparents. And then people would tell you funny stories about your relatives, about the places they come from. And that is history. That's how memories pass throughout my family, especially because people live their lives. They weren't sitting there writing things down for their grandson to come to pop up in 2020 and ask them. Some people are lucky to have historians in the family, and some people are better at recording and giving their history to other people. So that's, I think once we look at the fact that we do it every day, actually studying history for a degree, I think becomes less intimidating. Because what you're actually doing is you're actually working with skills that you already use, but you've never looked at them in the form of making history. You thought, oh, I like that Facebook post. I am interesting or not. But what you're actually doing is making history. I think what I'm doing at the moment is I'm actually looking at cultural history, the history of sport. This sort of goes back to the telling of stories and the creation of histories. It starts from just simple arguing with your friends over who is your favorite football player, who is your favorite basketball player. People often talk in memories. People describe memories and they talk in hallowed tones about people they've never met. I love Cristiano Ronaldo because when Cristiano Ronaldo scored a particular goal in a particular game, you remember exactly what you were doing at that time. And what you find is, even though the memory gets a bit blurry over time, people always remember where they were at particular moments in history. So that for me was what made history quite fun. I decided after working for years that there was something missing. Rather than continually having these arguments, now, I think are we coming to the end? After continually having these arguments, I decided to go back to university and formalize my life, formalize my academic ambitions, and hopefully go on to encourage other people to do the same.
Thank you very much. Your story is really interesting. I think it's been quite inspiring to hear. Just in the last sort of 5 minutes, we've just got a few questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
So I'll start off with, do you have any recommendations for reacting to change? I know that's something you touched on.
It's a good question. Do I have any recommendations for reacting to change? I think the most important thing is to be open to it, to understand that it is the one constant, or it is a constant in life. And I think you should in some cases, enjoy it. Also, when you look at it in history, an example would be to don't judge the past on your current lens, if that makes sense. So understand that what may have been acceptable in 1700 is not now.
Okay. Brilliant. Someone asked, how can you be prepared for university? Did you have any tips? Experiences?
I think the first thing is to find someone in the university, and it could be your department, the department that you're going to study in, and stay in touch. Don't become isolated. Stay in touch with the academic staff, stay in touch with the pastoral staff as well. And always be, if you have a problem, no matter how small it may seem, make sure you let somebody know.
Okay. Brilliant. Do you have any advice for someone who's wanting to pursue history, whether that be at university or beyond?
I think the advice I would give is go for, eventually you do your general history, and then eventually you'll specialize. Basically, try to find something that inspires you to get up in the morning. When there are going to be times when you're doing history that you're not going to want to do it for whatever reason, you have to find that thing that gets you up in the morning when you're not feeling 100%, which makes you have to love it enough to keep going in difficult times, and it will pay you back 100-fold.
Brilliant. If someone was unsure about whether they wanted to study history or not, what would be something you would say to them?
I'd probably say, what is it about history like? Do you watch history on television? Do you listen to history podcasts? What period of history interests you? What fascinates you? And then you'll find your niche. And once you find your niche, you work towards it, and you should get there eventually.
Brilliant. Leading off from that, what was it that started your passion for history?
Oh, it was I was at school. I think I was about 14, and we had a class test, and I was top of the class, and I thought, oh, I'm actually good at this, and then I've just continued to run with it.
Brilliant. I know you touched on some things about sort of having the balance. Is there anything that you had in tips for sort of like time management?
Like I said, I think it's important to make sure that you include time to wind down and relax. And I think it's important to know what your working practices are. So if you're the kind of person that works in the morning, work in the morning. If you're the kind of person that is a night owl, work in the evening. And I would probably say use blocks of 2 hours, because the human brain can only take so much information. When you read, reread it. Don't just read something once, reread it, because you'll see it again in the light of day when you're not tired, and it will mean a completely different thing.
Okay. This one links back to an earlier one. So if someone was looking to sort of explore history further in their career, what do you think they could do to make themselves stand out from others?
I suppose it's the area of history the passion for the area of history that you're concerned with. A lot of people think that you could actually have a history of anything. So you're finding nowadays a lot of people, there are food historians. You get historians of design. So you can combine your interests, what you're interested in anyway, and then you can look at it further.
Yeah. We've gone slightly over. I think this one's quite important to finish off. Did you have any tips for dealing with sort of disappointment or sort of a downfall along the way?
Don't lose faith in yourself. Every day you've got to think to yourself how amazing it is that you're in the position that you're in. You're basically embarking on a career where you get to talk about the thing that you enjoy the most, and just to be grateful for that. And everybody wants to be listened to, and everybody wants to be heard, and you can make your degree your chance to get that across.
Thank you very much. I think that's drawn us to a close. Your advice has been really helpful and really interesting. Thanks for giving up your time. I know you've gone slightly over. If anyone has any other questions or we didn't have time to answer your question, you could submit them on our website, or you can follow our social media to find out about our latest talk. Thanks again for giving up your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.